The sound was a dry, rasping whisper, like dead leaves skittering across concrete, but it ripped through me like a chainsaw. I sat perfectly still in the quiet hum of the office, the headphones clamped tight over my ears, listening to my life unravel. It was Sarah's voice, unmistakably hers, low and intimate. And it wasn't meant for me. The air conditioning hummed a comforting drone usually, but now it felt like the breath of a predator circling. On my screen, the audio waveform scrolled, a green jagged line representing every syllable of a conversation I should never have heard. This wasn't some random eavesdropping. She knew every single word spoken here was captured, catalogued, and stored. Yet, she spoke, her voice laced with a playful affection I thought was reserved only for me. She was talking to Mark. Mark. Just saying his name, even silently in my head, felt like swallowing broken glass. He was the new consultant, brought in just 3 months ago to help us with the expansion. He had a disarming smile and a handshake that felt too firm. I'd liked him. We'd even had a few beers after work, talking about sports, about the market, about life. He'd looked me in the eye, clinked glasses with me, all while apparently having an affair with my wife. My wife. Sarah. The recording continued. It wasn't just the intimate tone that twisted my gut. It was the content. She was telling him things about me, things about our business, things that were not just personal but highly sensitive, potentially damaging. She was laughing, a light, tinkling sound, as she described the inner workings of our new venture, the venture I had poured every ounce of my savings, every drop of my sweat into. Project that was supposed to secure our future, our dreams. He's so naive sometimes, she chuckled, her voice like a knife turning in an open wound. He thinks this new investment is foolproof, but if we just nudge it in the right direction, it could all go south so quickly. My breath hitched. Naive. My mind raced, trying to grasp the full weight of what she was saying. This wasn't just an affair. This was something far more sinister. This was a deliberate act of sabotage. Our new venture, the one with the huge potential but also the massive risk, relied on certain conditions, certain very secret details to succeed. Details only Sarah and I and our lawyers knew. She was sharing those details with Mark, her lover. And his intentions, if her words were anything to go by, were anything but innocent. I felt a cold dread spread through my chest, chilling me from the inside out. My hands, resting on the desk, felt suddenly clammy. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to make the words unsaid, the recording unheard. The sound vibrated through the headphones, through my skull, into the very core of my being. And his old legal trouble, Mark's voice, smooth as silk, cut in. You are sure that's completely buried? No way it resurfaces? Sarah again, confident, almost gloating. Sealed tighter than a drum. But if someone had the right information, the exact details of the settlement, the names of the parties involved, then it could be reopened. It would ruin him. Financially, reputationally. He'd lose everything. His career, his standing, the company. My eyes snapped open. This wasn't just about our business. This was about my past. A dark chapter I had fought tooth and nail to put behind me. A legal battle from years ago. A wrongful accusation that almost cost me everything, but which I had successfully, painstakingly, buried with a settlement and a strict confidentiality agreement. How did she even know these specific details? I had only ever told her the bare minimum, the broad strokes, precise names, the exact terms. Those were things only my lawyer and I knew. She must have dug them up, researched them, or somehow had access to old files. The thought made my skin crawl. She had been systematically gathering this information, weaponizing our shared past. The recording was long, too long. It stretched on, detailing not just my secrets, but our shared vulnerabilities, the weaknesses of our company, the precise leverage points for someone wanting to bring it down. It became clear this wasn't an impulsive confession of love. This was a tactical discussion, a plan, a conspiracy. They were planning to destroy me, us, everything we had built together. All for what? For Mark to gain control? For Sarah to escape? For a twisted combination of both? My mind screamed. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with every fiber of my being, the woman who shared my bed, my dreams, my life, was actively plotting my downfall. And she was doing it on a recorded line, thinking herself safe, thinking I wouldn't be listening, thinking I wouldn't be reviewing these specific calls. She was wrong. So terribly, devastatingly wrong. The headphones felt like shackles, binding me to this horrifying reality. I wanted to rip them off, to scream, to smash the computer, to erase the sound. But I couldn't. I had to listen. I had to understand the full scope of their treachery. Every word was a blow, every chuckle a stab. My heart, which had been beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs, suddenly felt like a stone, heavy and cold in my chest. It felt like it had been torn right out. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was an annihilation. The rest of the world faded. The sounds of the city outside, the distant rumble of traffic, the faint chatter from another office, all became meaningless noise. There was only Sarah's voice, and Mark's, weaving a tapestry of betrayal, thread by agonizing thread. I was trapped, a silent witness to my own demise, orchestrated by the one person I had never, ever imagined could hurt me this way. The recording played on, and my life as I knew it, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Before this, before the static hiss of the recorded line and the casual cruelty of Sarah's voice, my world was vibrant. It was built on trust, on shared laughter, on a future we had meticulously planned together. We met in college. 1,000 years ago it felt like, though it was only a decade. I was a quiet engineering student, more comfortable with schematics than social gathering. Sarah was a whirlwind, bright and outgoing, with a laugh that could make sunshine seem dull. She saw something in me, something beyond the awkwardness, and she pulled it out. Our relationship grew slowly at first, then accelerated into an unstoppable force. We were inseparable. We finished our degrees, got entry-level jobs, and spent our evenings dreaming. We wanted to build something of our own, something meaningful, not just a house, not just a family, but a legacy. A business that could make a real difference. That dream became Apex Innovations. It started in my garage, literally, with late nights fueled by cheap coffee and even cheaper pizza. Sarah handled the marketing and client relations. Her charm and intelligence opening doors that my technical prowess alone couldn't. I built the products, designed the systems, crunched the numbers. We were a perfect team, complementary halves of a whole. Every success felt like a shared victory, every setback a challenge we'd conquer together. Our marriage was the natural next step. It wasn't a grand, lavish affair. It was intimate, meaningful, held in a small garden with just our closest friends and family. I remember looking at her that day, seeing the sunlight catch in her hair, and feeling a certainty I'd never experienced before. This was it. This was my person, my partner in everything. The secrets we shared weren't just business strategies or financial plans. They were woven into the fabric of our lives. I told her everything. My childhood anxieties, the lingering pain of my parents' messy divorce, my fear of failure, my deepest hopes. She was my confidant, the one person I knew would always understand, always support. One of the biggest secrets, the one that Mark and Sarah discussed so casually on that recording, was my past legal issue. It happened years before I even met Sarah, when I was fresh out of college, working for a small startup. There was a patent dispute, a nasty, complicated mess, where I was wrongly accused of intellectual property theft. It was a nightmare. My name was dragged through the mud. I almost lost everything. But I fought. And eventually, after months of agonizing legal battles, we settled. It was sealed. All records removed from public access. I swore I'd never speak of it again. It was a dark cloud I needed to forget. But Sarah, she found out somehow after we were married. She said she did a background check on me, just to be sure. It felt strange, invasive even, but she framed it as a quirky act of love, wanting to know every part of me. I confessed the details, thinking she would understand the trauma, the vulnerability. I told her about the exact nature of the accusation, the specific parties involved, the terms of the settlement. I explained how it almost broke me. She held me, told me she loved me more for my honesty, for my resilience. She promised it would always be our secret, safe with her. "I'll protect you, Alex," she'd whispered, tracing circles on my back. Always. Another secret was the genesis of Apex Innovations itself. The initial capital wasn't just savings. It came from a small, unexpected inheritance from a distant relative. A windfall I hadn't anticipated. Most people thought we started from scratch, bootstrapped our way up. But that inheritance, combined with my own savings and a calculated risk, allowed us to jumpstart Apex. Sarah knew the exact amount, the source, the bank accounts. If that information got out, it could expose us to financial scrutiny, potential legal challenges from other distant relatives, and damage our image as self-made entrepreneurs. It was a detail we kept carefully hidden. Then there was the new project. Our biggest gamble yet. It involved a proprietary algorithm I'd developed, something truly groundbreaking that could revolutionize our industry. But it was also extremely fragile, easily replicated or undermined if the core principles were revealed. We were in the final stages of securing a major investment, a deal that would launch us into the big leagues. Sarah was handling the investor relations, managing the delicate dance of negotiation. We had a specific timeline, a specific strategy to present our pitch, a specific series of steps to protect the intellectual property. She knew it all. Every single detail, every pressure point. Our life was intertwined, our finances were joint. Our house was ours. Our dreams were shared. We even had a ritual on Sunday mornings, making pancakes together. Just us. No phones, no work. Just talking about the week ahead, the silly things that happened, our hopes for the future. I used to watch her across the kitchen island, flour dusting her nose, sunlight catching in her hair, and think how incredibly lucky I was. She was my rock, my confidant, my partner, my everything. I had believed, truly believed, that our bond was unbreakable, that we were impervious to the outside world, because we had each other. We had an unspoken understanding, a loyalty that transcended mere words. I had never once doubted her, not in a single moment of our 10 years together. That blind trust, that absolute faith, was what made the recording so utterly devastating. It wasn't just a revelation of infidelity. It was the violent shattering of my entire worldview. It wasn't just her betrayal. It was the complete obliteration of everything I had held true. And it made me wonder, chillingly, how long she had been planning this. how long she had been gathering the threads of my life, meticulously, patiently, preparing to unravel them all. Mark joined Apex Innovations 3 months before my world imploded. 3 months. It felt like an eternity now, a slow-motion car crash I hadn't seen coming. He came highly recommended, a strategic consultant, with a glittering resume and a smooth, confident demeanor. He was brought in specifically to help us with the expansion, to navigate the complexities of securing the new investment for our groundbreaking project. Sarah had championed his hiring. "He's brilliant, Alex," she'd gushed after their initial interviews. "Exactly what we need. He understands the market. He's got connections." My first impression of Mark was positive. He was charismatic, well-dressed, and articulate. He spoke with authority, but also with an approachable charm. He'd crack jokes, offer to grab coffee, and seemed genuinely interested in our vision for Apex. Talked for hours in those initial weeks, mapping out strategies, discussing market trends. He seemed dedicated, insightful. I had no reason to suspect anything. He integrated seamlessly into our small team, becoming a regular fixture in the office, even joining us for a few Friday evening drinks. Sarah and Mark's working relationship seemed natural. She was the head of business development. He was the strategic consultant. They spent a lot of time together in meetings, refining pitches, analyzing data. It made sense. They were both sharp, driven, and focused on the success of the new project. I was often absorbed in the technical aspects, deep in my coding lab, so their frequent collaborations didn't raise any flags. I saw it as efficient teamwork. But little things started to shift. Nothing overt, nothing that would scream affair to a man deeply in love and completely trusting. Just subtle changes. Sarah started staying later at the office, citing important calls with investors in different time zones, or intensive strategy sessions with Mark. She'd come home tired, but sometimes with a spark in her eyes that I attributed to her passion for the project. Then there were the phone calls. She'd often step out of the room to take them or lower her voice. If I asked who it was, she'd say it was a client or her mother or a distant friend. Never Mark, not directly. She'd say, "Work call." I didn't press. I trusted her. She deserved her privacy. My own work was demanding, often consuming my evenings, so I sympathized with her long hours. We were both working hard for our shared future, or so I believed. Their interactions at the office also subtly changed. A quick glance held a fraction too long. A brush of hands that seemed casual, but my subconscious picked up on. A shared joke that only they understood, leaving me slightly on the outside. I dismissed these as occupational hazards of intense collaboration. People who work closely sometimes develop a shorthand, an exclusive camaraderie. I was a little jealous perhaps of their easy rapport, but it was a fleeting thought, immediately replaced by pride in how well my wife was handling such a critical part of our business. One evening, Mark joined us for dinner at our house. It was a casual meal, a team bonding thing Sarah had suggested. He was charming, engaging with both of us, talking about his travels, his interests, his plans. He asked about my hobbies, listened intently. He even brought a bottle of wine, a nice one, and offered to help Sarah in the kitchen. As they moved around the space, their movements seemed to synchronize a silent dance that felt too familiar. I saw him glance at her, a fleeting look that seemed to hold more than professional admiration. But I told myself I was imagining things. My imagination, fueled by an exhausting work week, was playing tricks. Complimented Sarah's cooking, her intelligence, her dedication. He spoke about her with a deference that felt almost worshipful. I chuckled, pleased. "Yeah, she's amazing, isn't she?" I'd said, proud. Sarah had smiled, a small, knowing smile, but her eyes had darted to Mark, not me. That was a flicker, a tiny red flag that I had instantly folded away, rationalizing it as her shyness, her humility. The late nights became more frequent. Her explanations grew more vague. My sleep grew more restless. I'd wake up, reach for her, and find her side of the bed cold. Sometimes she'd return just before dawn, smelling faintly of coffee. And something else. Something musky and unfamiliar that wasn't her usual perfume. She'd explained she'd been pulling an all-nighter at the office, trying to finalize a presentation. I'd accept it, tuck her in and drift back to sleep, tired and trusting. I was so deep in my own world of code and algorithms, so focused on the technical success of Apex, that I missed the glaring signs. My trust in Sarah was absolute. It was a fundamental pillar of my existence. I couldn't conceive of her betraying me, not in this way. Not with someone like Mark, who had just walked into our lives. She was my wife, my partner, my best friend. The idea of her being unfaithful was an absurdity, a concept from a cheap movie, not my carefully constructed reality. So I let it all go. The late nights, the hushed calls, the shared glances, the subtle shifts in her demeanor. I told myself it was stress, or the intensity of the project. I believed what I wanted to believe, because the alternative was too terrifying, too painful to even contemplate. And that blind trust, that unwavering belief in the person I loved more than anything, was precisely what allowed them to build their conspiracy right under my nose, quietly, patiently, until the day I stumbled upon that recorded line. A line I'd set up to protect our business, only to discover it had captured the slow, deliberate dismantling of my entire life. The unease had been a whisper at first, a faint tremor beneath the solid ground of my trust. Then it grew into a hum, a persistent, low-frequency vibration that I couldn't quite identify. Sarah was distant, not always, but in pockets of time. She'd get lost in thought, a faraway look in her eyes. When I asked what was on her mind, she'd brush it off. Just work, Alex. So much to juggle with this new project. My gut, a part of me I usually relied on, started sending tiny signals. They were so small, so easy to dismiss. A flicker of defensiveness when I asked about her day. A slight hesitation before answering a simple question. The way she'd sometimes look at her phone, then quickly put it away if I entered the room. I told myself I was stressed. The new project was huge. The stakes were high, and I was probably just projecting my own anxieties onto her. The recorded line was part of our new project setup. It was a dedicated communication channel for the top-secret investment deal. I had implemented it for security. We were dealing with very sensitive financial data and intellectual property. Every call had to be logged, transcribed, and archived for compliance and protection against industrial espionage. It was standard procedure for high-stakes ventures. Sarah knew this. We had discussed it thoroughly. She even helped draft the internal policy for its use. My routine involved reviewing a percentage of these recorded calls each week. It was tedious work, listening to dry financial discussions and technical jargon, but necessary. I usually delegated it, but for this project I wanted to personally oversee it, given the extreme confidentiality. I was looking for anomalies, for anything that hinted at a leak, a breach of our security. I was looking for an external threat. I found an internal one instead. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The office was quiet. Sarah was out, supposedly at an off-site meeting. I had just finished debugging a complex piece of code and decided to tackle the call logs. I poured myself a cup of stale coffee, put on my headphones, and clicked on the first recording in the queue. It was an investor call, predictable and dull. I fast-forwarded through parts, noting key points, checking for compliance. Then came the second call. Timestamp showed it was from the previous night, around 11 p.m. Sarah's usual late night at the office hour. The caller ID was internal from Mark's extension. My brow furrowed slightly. Why would they be discussing official business at that hour? And on a recorded line, when they could just be in a private meeting room? It struck me as odd but not alarming. Maybe they were just trying to push through a deadline. I hit play. The initial sound was muffled. Then Sarah's voice came through, clear and distinct. But it wasn't the voice she used for business. It was soft, almost purring. "You made it," she said, a little breathy. "I thought you'd never get here." My stomach clenched. What was this? I leaned closer to the screen, my heart starting to pound a slow, heavy rhythm. Then Mark's voice, equally soft, equally intimate. "Couldn't stay away, Angel. Had to see you. Angel." The word echoed in the silent office, reverberating in my headphones. Angel. He called her Angel. My hands started to tremble. I felt a cold wave wash over me, a sickening mix of confusion and dread. This was not a business call. This was something else entirely. I froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. My fingers hovered over the pause button, but I couldn't bring myself to press it. Perverse, morbid curiosity, combined with a horrifying certainty, compelled me to keep listening. I wanted it to be a joke, a misunderstanding, a bad dream. But the intimacy in their voices, the unmistakable warmth, the familiarity, was like a physical blow. Then came the words about me, about the business, about my past, the casual cruelty, the clinical dissection of my vulnerabilities, the strategic discussion of how to exploit them. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a malicious attack. Every word was a poison dart, hitting its mark with chilling precision. My old legal trouble, the inheritance, the details of the new algorithm. Everything I had entrusted to her, everything I had believed was safe, was being laid bare, weaponized. The revelation wasn't a sudden, explosive shock. It was a creeping horror, a slow dawning of absolute devastation. It started with the realization of the affair, a betrayal so profound it already felt like a physical wound. Then, layered on top of that, came the understanding of the conspiracy, the calculated plot to dismantle my life. The fact that she was doing it on this line, the one I set up for security, the one she knew was recorded, was the final, brutal twist of the night. It showed a level of audacity, a contempt that truly broke me. It meant she felt safe. She felt untouchable. She believed I would never find us. Or perhaps worse, she didn't care. I pulled the headphones off for a moment, the silence of the room deafening. My ears rang, my chest ached, my vision blurred. I wanted to scream, to rage, to tear something apart. But no sound came out. My throat was constricted, dry. I put the headphones back on, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped them. I had to hear it all. Every vile word, every treacherous plan. I had to understand the full extent of the damage. I had to know exactly how deep the betrayal went. The truth, no matter how excruciating, was now the only thing that mattered. And it was all right there, captured forever on that recorded line. My nightmare playing out in perfect, horrifying clarity. The air in the office grew heavy, thick with the unsaid, the unheard. But I heard it all, every word. And, with each word, a new layer of my life peeled away, revealing a raw, bleeding wound beneath. The recording, which I had now replayed countless times, was a meticulously detailed blueprint of my ruin. He's been so careful with the new algorithm. Sarah's voice floated, almost admiringly. But it has a single point of failure in the initial coding sequence. If you can replicate that sequence with a slight modification, it would render his version obsolete, and ours, yours, the dominant one. My stomach dropped. The algorithm, my magnum opus. Years of work, of sleepless nights, of trial and error. The heart of Apex Innovation's future. It was indeed elegant, but like any complex system, it had a theoretical vulnerability. A single specific sequence that, if compromised, could be reverse engineered or even exploited to create a competing product. I had spent months trying to patch it, but the fix was complicated and required full control of the initial deployment. I had explained this to Sarah, shared my concerns, the technical specifics, the timeline for the eventual patch. She had listened, nodded, offered suggestion, and now she was giving that very specific, very critical detail to Mark. "You are sure it's that sequence?" Mark pressed. His voice sharp with professional interest, the lover's charm momentarily gone. "The Phoenix Protocol, as he calls it." "Exactly," Sarah confirmed, a note of triumph in her voice. "The Phoenix Protocol. He thinks it's genius, the way it rises from the ashes of potential failure. But it's his biggest weakness. Just tweak the reinitialization parameters slightly, and boom, open season." Phoenix Protocol, my internal nickname for the algorithm's self-correction mechanism. A detail I'd only ever shared with Sarah, because she'd asked about my creative process. This wasn't just a general concept, this was certain. She knew my intellectual property inside and out, and she was handing it over. Then they moved on to the financial secrets. "And his family trust," Mark mused. "You said, Tweffy here is a significant portion still in a blind trust set up by his great-aunt." "Yes," Sarah replied, a touch of exasperation in her voice. "He's so rigid about it. Won't touch it, says it's for long-term security, for the kids we might have someday. It's millions, Mark, just sitting there. The family trust." This was the inheritance I had used to kickstart Apex, but only a small portion. The vast majority of it was indeed in a blind trust, managed by a third party, untouchable until certain conditions were met, or until I decided to dissolve it. It was my ultimate safety net, my family's legacy. Only my lawyer, a distant relative trustee, and Sarah knew the full details of its existence and its value. And now Mark knew. The implications were horrifying. If they could somehow gain access, or use this information to leverage my other assets, it would be catastrophic. "And the old legal issue," Mark continued, his voice shifting to a more serious tone. "The wrongful accusation. You mentioned specific names involved in the settlement agreement." "Yes, of course," Sarah said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "There was the lead plaintiff, Gregory Vance, and his lawyer, Elena Petrova, and the judge who sealed the records, Judge Wallace, and the exact settlement amount was $750,000. The entire case revolved around the misuse of the quantum leap patent. He was so devastated when it happened. It almost ruined him. He truly believes it's all buried. But I've kept a copy of the original court filing, just in case." My blood ran cold. Gregory Vance, Elena Petrova, Judge Wallace, quantum leap, $750,000. These were the names. The exact amount, the specific patent that had been at the heart of the most traumatic period of my life. Case was so meticulously sealed, so effectively buried, that I genuinely believed no one could ever find the specifics. And she had kept a copy of the court filing, just in case. For what case? A case against me. She hadn't just accidentally stumbled upon this. She had actively obtained and stored the very documents that could destroy me. The betrayal was so deep, so thorough, it made my head spin. It wasn't just her cheating on me. It wasn't just a fleeting moment of weakness. This was a calculated, cold-blooded plan. She wasn't just a lover. She was an accomplice, actively participating in a scheme to fleece me, to ruin me, to leave me with nothing. "He's vulnerable, Mark," Sarah concluded, her voice devoid of any emotion that resembled love or care for me. It was purely strategic, analytical. "He's focused entirely on this new project. His emotional blind spot is his trust. He trusts me implicitly. He would never suspect. We can use that." My lungs burned. My eyes stung. The headphones felt like weights pressing down on my skull. Use that. Use my trust. The very foundation of our relationship, the thing I had cherished most, was being weaponized against me. The woman who had sworn to love and protect me was dismantling my life, piece by excruciating piece. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash the computer, to erase the very existence of this file, but I couldn't. I needed to hear every word. The secrets they were discussing weren't just details. They were the very levers of my life. My financial security, my professional reputation, my past trauma, my future dreams, all of it laid bare for her lover, to be used against me. The realization settled in my bones, chilling me to the core. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was a complete and utter annihilation of who I thought I was, of what I thought my life was. The betrayal was so absolute, so comprehensive, that it left no room for doubt, no space for hope. There was only the cold, hard, horrifying truth, echoing in the quiet of my office, brought to life by the recorded words of the woman I loved. I don't know how long I sat there after the recording ended. Minutes? Hours? Time ceased to have meaning. The office was still. The hum of the air conditioning, a mocking reminder of the mundane world outside my shattered reality. My hands were balled into fists, knuckles white, trembling uncontrollably. My jaw was locked, aching. My eyes burned, but no tears came. Felt like my tear ducts had simply ceased to exist, replaced by a searing emptiness. The physical reaction was overwhelming. My stomach churned, a knot of nausea rising in my throat. My head pounded, a relentless drumbeat of betrayal. I felt a chill so profound it seemed to emanate from my very bones, despite the temperate office air. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to collapse. I wanted to scream until my throat was raw, but I couldn't make a sound. It was as if my body had been encased in ice, a frozen monument to despair. I somehow managed to disconnect the headphones, letting them clatter onto the desk. The silence was deafening, yet Sarah's voice, Mark's voice, continued to echo in my mind, replaying every sickening detail. Phoenix Protocol, Gregory Vance, $750,000, millions in the blind trust. Each phrase a fresh stab. My first instinct was primal, violent. I wanted to confront her, to burst into a rage, to shatter something. But a colder, more insidious thought began to take hold. What else didn't I know? How many other calls were there? How long had this been going on? With a trembling finger, I navigated back to the call logs. I scrolled through, checking the dates, the durations. My heart sank deeper with each passing entry. There were dozens of calls between Sarah and Mark, spanning weeks, even months. Some were short, some were long. All were marked with internal extensions. My stomach tightened further. I had only listened to one, which was devastating enough. What secrets did the others hold? I started with the oldest one I could find, dated almost 2 months prior. The initial calls were more cautious, less explicit. They started as seemingly innocent conversations about the project, gradually weaving in personal comments, compliments, subtle flirting. Then came the shared laughter, the intimate whispers, the unmistakable chemistry. It was like watching a slow-motion documentary of my own demise. Each call was a step further into their conspiracy, a deeper plunge into my betrayal. One call from about 6 weeks ago caught my attention. Sarah was talking about our financial holdings. "He's so meticulous with the joint accounts. It's impossible to skim anything without him noticing," she sighed. "But he keeps a separate, smaller emergency fund account for business travel. It's almost never checked." "How much is in it?" Mark asked, his voice predatory. "About 50,000, she replied. "He just keeps topping it up, doesn't really monitor it closely. Maybe a few transactions here and there for hotels, flights. It'd be easy to siphon off chunks without immediate detection." $50,000. My emergency fund meant to cover unexpected business expense, a relatively small amount in the grand scheme of our finances. But the thought of her plotting to steal it, to siphon it off, made my blood boil. It wasn't about the money, it was about the principle. It was about the casual, cold-blooded intent to defraud me, to steal from our shared pool, which she claimed was hers too. Another recording from a month ago detailed our home security system. "He trusts it completely," Sarah said. "Thinks it's state-of-the-art. But I know the override code for the external cameras. And the main alarm has a 10-second delay on activation. Plenty of time to get in and out if you know what you're doing." This was chilling, not just for theft, but for something more insidious. What did they plan to do? Break into my own home? Plant something? Take something? It revealed a level of planning, of malevolence, that transcended mere infidelity. This was a criminal conspiracy. I listened to them discuss our friends, our family. Sarah provided cynical assessments of my closest allies, pointing out their weaknesses, their loyalties, their potential reactions if things went sour. She even talked about my sister Emma, a fiercely loyal person who I knew would stand by me no matter what. "Emma is a problem," Sarah stated. "Too protective, too intuitive. She'd smell a rat immediately." This wasn't just a woman betraying her husband. This was a meticulous strategist, systematically dissecting every aspect of my life, every relationship, every asset, every vulnerability, and presenting it to her accomplice as a series of targets. She knew me better than anyone. She knew where my armor was thinnest, where my foundations were weakest, and she was using that intimate knowledge to tear me down. The feeling of being so utterly exposed, so completely vulnerable, by the person who was supposed to be my safe harbor, was a pain unlike any I had ever known. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was defilement. It was as if she had taken a surgeon's scalpel to my soul and laid every nerve ending bare. I knew then that I couldn't confront her immediately. Not yet. I needed to gather everything. Every single recording. Every piece of evidence. I needed to understand the full scope of their plan, to anticipate their next move, because this wasn't just about my broken heart anymore. This was about my survival, my reputation, my entire future. And against two people who knew me intimately, who knew my every weakness, I had to be smarter, colder, and more prepared than I had ever been in my life. The nausea tightened its grip, but a cold resolve began to solidify in its place. The first thing I did was make copies. Not just one, but multiple, redundant copies of every single record. on external drives, in cloud storage, encrypted and secured. My analytical mind, usually so focused on business solutions, was now entirely consumed by self-preservation. I needed undeniable proof. Proof that couldn't be deleted, couldn't be denied, couldn't be explained away. As I worked, methodically copying files, a strange calm settled over me. It wasn't peace, not by a long shot. It was the calm of a soldier before battle, the quiet focus before an inevitable clash. The raw, gut-wrenching pain was still there, a constant dull ache, but it was now overlaid with a cold, clear layer of strategic thinking. I started listing everything, every secret she had divulged. The Phoenix Protocol vulnerability, the details of the old legal case, the family trust information, the emergency travel fund, the home security override. Each item was a weapon she had handed to my enemy. I also noted the dates and times of the calls, creating a timeline of their escalating treachery. It was sickening to see the progression, from casual flirting to cold, calculated conspiracy. The next step was to assess the damage. If their plan succeeded, what would I lose? Affec's innovations. If the Phoenix Protocol was compromised, our revolutionary product would be worthless. Our major investment deal would fall through. The company, our dream, would collapse, financial ruin. The family trust, the emergency fund, combined with the loss of Apex, would leave me utterly destitute. Reputational destruction, the old legal case, if reopened, would not only drain what little I had left defending myself, but it would publicly disgrace me. My career would be over, my name would be mud. Personal destruction, my home, my relationships, my sense of self, all gone. The stakes were incredibly high. This wasn't just about a divorce, this was about defending my entire existence. I started thinking about Sarah. How was I going to confront her? The old Alex, the trusting, naive Alex, would have burst into tears, begged for an explanation, pleaded for reconciliation. But that Alex was dead, murdered by a recorded line. The new Alex, forged in the fires of betrayal, knew that direct confrontation without a plan would be foolish. She was cunning. She was a master manipulator. She would lie, she would deny, she would twist things. I couldn't give her an opening. I had to act normal. This was the hardest part. Going home, looking her in the eye, pretending everything was fine. Eating dinner with her, asking about her day, listening to her talk about work with Mark. Every smile she gave me, every touch, felt like a lie. A performance designed to keep me blind until they sprung their trap. It was an excruciating act of self-control. My insides were screaming, but my face remained impassive. I needed to gather more information, but subtly. I started reviewing the company's financial records more closely, looking for any unusual transactions in the emergency travel fund. I checked the server logs, seeing if there had been any attempts to access sensitive files related to the Phoenix Protocol from Mark or Sarah's accounts. I found small anomalies. A few $100 here, a few thousand there, slowly draining from the emergency fund. Nothing big enough to trigger an alert, but enough to confirm the record. And a few login attempts on the Phoenix Protocol files from Mark's account. Denied by my robust security, but attempts nonetheless. They were testing the waters. My mind raced through scenarios. Should I go to the police? A lawyer? If I did, the scandal would be immediate. The company's secrets would be exposed, even if they were trying to steal them. The legal case from my past would certainly resurface. It would be a public circus, and in a way, they would win, because my reputation would be shattered regardless. I couldn't go public immediately, not until I had a bulletproof strategy. I needed to turn their own weapons against them. The recorded line was my ultimate leverage. She didn't know I had heard it. She didn't know I knew. This was my secret weapon. This was my advantage. I started to plant seeds of doubt, small, calculated moves. I subtly changed the network access protocols for the Phoenix Protocol files, making them even more secure. I activated an obscure setting on the home security system that would log every override attempt, no matter how brief. I made sure to casually mention in conversation that I had just moved the emergency fund to a new, more secure bank account, one that required biometric authentication. I watched Sarah's face carefully for a reaction. A flicker of surprise, a barely perceptible tightening around her eyes. She covered it quickly, of course. "Oh, good idea, honey. Can never be too careful." But I saw it. She was reacting. I was playing a dangerous game, walking a tightrope above an abyss. One wrong step, and I could fall. But staying still meant certain annihilation. I had to outwit them. I had to become as cold and calculating as they were. The love I felt for Sarah, the years of shared history, were now just fuel for my resolve. There was no going back. The woman I married was gone, replaced by a stranger who wore her face. And that stranger was trying to destroy me. I wouldn't let her. The confrontation, it was like planning for war, knowing the exact moment the first shot would be fired. I picked a Saturday morning. Sarah was home, relaxed, sipping coffee in her favorite mug. The house was quiet, save for the chirping of birds outside, a false calm before the storm. I had rehearsed this 1,000 times in my head. No yelling, no tears, just cold, hard facts. I sat across from her at the kitchen island, the place where we'd planned our future, where we'd shared countless Sunday pancakes. The irony twisted my gut. "Sarah," I began, my voice steady, betraying none of the tremor in my hands that were hidden beneath the table. "We need to talk about the new project." Her eyes, usually so expressive, narrowed slightly. "What about it, Alex? Is something wrong with the funding?" "Not with the funding specifically," I said. "More about the communications around it." I watched her face. A subtle shift in her posture, a barely perceptible tensing of her shoulders. She was on alert. "Good. I've been reviewing the call logs from the dedicated project line." I continued, my voice flat, emotionless. "For security purposes, you know." Her smile froze. Her eyes darted away for a fraction of a second, then back to me too quickly. "Oh, anything interesting?" Her voice was lighter than usual, a false cheeriness that grated on my ears. "Yes," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "Very interesting. I came across a particular call from about 6 weeks ago, late at night. From Mark's extension, the color drained from her face. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. The false cheeriness evaporated, replaced by a mask of sudden fear. Bingo! It was a rather long call. I pressed on, relentless. And it wasn't about the project funding, not in the way you might think. It was about other things, very personal things. She finally found her voice, a whisper. "Alex, I can explain, can you, Sarah?" I cut her off, my voice rising slightly but still controlled. "Can you explain Phoenix Protocol, or Gregory Vance, or how you kept copies of my old legal filings, or the exact details of my family trust? Or how much is in the emergency travel fund that you've been subtly siphoning from?" Each name, each detail was a hammer blow. With every word, her face contorted, from fear to shock, then to a flicker of something akin to rage. The mask was cracking. "You listen to my private calls?" She spat, a sudden flash of anger trying to turn it on me. How dare you? That's an invasion of privacy. An invasion of privacy. I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. You want to talk about invasion of privacy? You told your lover, Mark, every single secret I ever entrusted you with. You plotted to steal my company, to ruin my reputation, to leave me destitute. And you did it on a recorded line, a line you knew was recorded, a line I set up for our protection. And you call my listening an invasion of privacy? My voice was trembling now, but with cold fury, not pain. She pushed back from the island, almost knocking over her coffee mug. He's not my lover. He's a colleague. And those are lies, Alex. Lies. He's just helping with the project. We were discussing vulnerabilities strategy. Her voice was high, frantic, the words tumbling out in a desperate torrent of denial. Don't insult my intelligence, Sarah, I said, my voice dropping back to a lethal calm. I have the recordings, all of them. Every intimate whisper, every chuckle, every detail of your scheme. I have weeks of your conversations with him. Conversations about how naive I am, how you can use my trust. Conversations about how to exploit the Phoenix Protocol, how to break into our own home, how to bleed the company dry. Her face went ashen. She knew, she saw the absolute certainty in my eyes. The jig was up. The carefully constructed facade crumbled. You did. You were going to leave me with nothing. You were going to ruin me. For him? For money? For what, Sarah? After everything we built? The question wasn't for an answer. It was for myself. It was the only thing I truly didn't understand. Tears sprang to her eyes, real tears this time, but they felt like crocodile tears. He manipulated me, Alex. He promised me things. He said you were holding me back. He said you were selfish. She was crying now, truly crying. But her words were still accusations against me, against Mark, against anyone but herself. He didn't make you tell him about my legal past, I said, cutting through her pathetic justification. He didn't make you steal my files. He didn't make you plot against your own husband. You chose to do that, Sarah. Every step of the way. She collapsed onto the kitchen stool, burying her face in her hands, sobbing. It was a terrible sound, but it didn't move me. Pain I felt was too deep, too fundamental for her tears to affect me. They were the tears of a court conspirator, not a remorseful wife. Get out, I said, my voice barely a whisper, but laced with absolute finality. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. I want you gone by the end of the day. And don't even think about taking anything. I have everything documented. Everything. And if you try anything at all, I will use every single one of those recordings. Do you understand? She looked up, her face blotchy with tears, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something I couldn't quite decipher. A glimmer of defiance, perhaps even then. And Mark, she choked out. What about him? Mark, I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. He's next. But you, Sarah, you are the one who broke my heart, and that's something no recording can fix. I stood up, walked away from the kitchen island, from the shattered remains of our life, leaving her sobbing in the silence. The confrontation was over. The war had just begun. The hours after the confrontation were a blur of motion and stark silence. Sarah didn't argue further. The absolute finality in my voice, combined with the clear implication of the recordings, seemed to break her. She went to the bedroom, and I heard the rustling of bags being packed. No more tears, no more protests, just the cold, efficient sounds of a life being dismantled. I stood in the living room, staring out the window, watching the sun climb higher, casting long shadows. It was a beautiful day, mocking the devastation inside. My mind was racing, trying to anticipate her moves. Would she try to contact Mark? Would she try to destroy any evidence she might have in the house? I had already secured the digital copies. But what about physical documents? I went through our home office, the one we had built together, sharing late nights, dreaming up apex innovations. My heart ached, but it was a phantom pain. The real pain was a deep, searing burn in my chest. I methodically checked every drawer, every file cap. In a hidden compartment in her desk, behind a stack of old magazines, I found it. A small, locked metal box. I knew what it was. Her special box where she kept her most private mementos. And inside, a folder, labeled Alex Legal. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were the physical copies, my old court filings. The exact unredacted settlement agreement. The correspondence with my old lawyer. The precise details of the quantum leap patent dispute. She hadn't just known about them. She had the physical evidence. The malicious intent solidified into an undeniable truth. This wasn't just impulsive. This was planned, calculated. When she emerged from the bedroom, a duffel bag slung over her shoulder, a small suitcase rolling behind her, she avoided my gaze. Her eyes were puffy, but her jaw was set. "I am going to my sister's," she mumbled, not looking at me. "Good," I said, my voice still devoid of emotion. "Don't come back. I'll have the locks changed, and the lawyers will be in touch about the divorce. No spousal support, no fight over assets. I have everything. You understand?" She flinched, then nodded, a barely perceptible movement. She understood. The recordings were her downfall. She opened the front door, paused for a moment on the threshold, and then walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. The sound echoed in the sudden, cavernous silence of the house. And just like that, 10 years of my life, a shared future, vanished. The immediate fallout at work was swift and brutal. I called an emergency meeting with our board of directors and legal counsel. I presented the recordings, I explained everything. The initial shock on their faces was priceless. Disbelief, then horror, then cold anger. The Phoenix Protocol. The financial vulnerabilities. The attempts to drain funds, the plans to sabotage the company. Mark was fired on the spot. His access was revoked, his accounts frozen. Our legal team immediately initiated proceedings against him for corporate espionage, theft of intellectual property, and conspiracy to commit fraud. It was messy, it was public, but it had to be done. The damage control was immense. We had to explain to our investors that our lead consultant was a spy, that our head of business development was complicit, and that our groundbreaking project was almost compromised. It was a nightmare. Our stock plummeted. Our reputation took a massive hit. The potential investors for the new project backed out. They couldn't risk it. They liked the technology, but the internal breach, the scandal, was too much. The dream of Apex Innovations becoming a market leader, of revolutionizing the industry, was effectively dead. We became a cautionary tale, a symbol of corporate vulnerability. My personal life was in shambles too. My sister Emma was heartbroken for me, but also furious at Sarah. She was my rock, helping me navigate the legal minefield, offering me a place to stay when I couldn't bear to be in our house. Our friends were divided. Some believed me immediately. Others found it hard to reconcile the Sarah they knew with the monster I described. Some even blamed me for the scandal for allowing it to happen. The old legal case did predictably resurface. The media, hungry for scandal, dug into my past. My name was dragged through the mud again. The headlines screamed about my checkered past, my corporate espionage case, and how my unstable personal life had led to the downfall of Apex Innovations. It was ironic and incredibly painful to be publicly shamed for the very thing I was fighting against. I didn't lose everything, not literally. I still had the house, though it felt haunted. I still had a portion of my personal savings, protected from Sarah's reach. But my professional future was uncertain. Apex Innovations was bleeding money, struggling to survive the fallout. And my trust, my belief in people, my very sense of self, was shattered beyond recognition. I spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Sarah, searching for signs I had missed. The red flags I dismissed, the subtle shifts I'd ignored. The self-blame was almost as crippling as the betrayal itself. How could I have been so blind, so foolish, so completely wrong about the one person I had loved most in the world? The legal battles with Sarah and Mark began. Slow, grinding, emotionally draining. Sarah fought for everything, despite the recordings, claiming duress, manipulation, anything to avoid accountability. Mark, for his part, tried to paint himself as an innocent third party, caught in a marital dispute. The recordings, undeniable and chilling, painted a different picture. They were my shield, my weapon, my last shred of justice. It was a long, painful road ahead, but at least now, I was fighting back. It has been 2 years. 2 long, grueling years since I sat in that office, headphones clamped tight, and listened to my life shatter. 2 years of lawyers, courtrooms, financial struggles, and a slow, agonizing process of rebuilding. Apex Innovations, the company Sarah and I built, did not recover fully. We downsized drastically. The revolutionary project was shelved, the algorithm protected, but its potential now locked away, too toxic to pursue public. We limped along, focusing on smaller, more secure contracts, a shadow of the ambitious dream it once was. I'm still CEO, but the title feels heavy, a constant reminder of what was lost. The energy, the passion, the belief in what we were doing, that spark is gone, replaced by a cold, cautious pragmatism. Sarah, she eventually faced consequences. The sheer volume and damning nature of the recordings made her legal position untenable. She couldn't deny the conspiracy. She couldn't deny the attempts to defraud. In the end, to avoid a potential criminal prosecution, she settled. She got nothing. No spousal support, no share of the company, no assets. She was stripped of everything, left only with the tarnished remains of her reputation. I heard she moved far away to a different state and is struggling to find work. Part of me, a small, dark part, feels a grim satisfaction. But mostly, tea here is just emptiness. The woman I loved is gone. The person who remains is a stranger, a betrayer, and a cautionary tale. Mark also faced the full force of our legal team. Corporate espionage charges, the intellectual property theft, the fraud attempts. He managed to avoid jail time, mostly due to his powerful legal representation and a plea bargain. But his career in our industry is finished. He's been blacklisted, his name synonymous with corporate treachery. Another small bit of victory, but it doesn't bring back what I lost. The house, our home, is still mine, but it's not the same. It feels haunted by her presence, by the ghosts of a life that never was. I considered selling it, moving on completely, but I couldn't bring myself to. It's a monument to my naivete, yes, but also to my resilience. A reminder that I survived. I don't make pancakes on Sundays anymore. Kitchen Island, once a symbol of shared dreams, is now just a cold, hard surface. My trust in people is fundamentally broken. I analyze every word, every gesture, every interaction. I see the subtext, the hidden agendas, the potential for betrayal in everyone. My instincts, once so reliable, now feel tainted. I build walls around myself, meticulously, carefully, ensuring no one can get close enough to inflict that kind of damage again. It's a lonely existence, but it feels safer. My sister Emma is still my anchor. She was there through it all, lending an ear, offering a shoulder, navigating the legal complexities. She's the only person I fully trust now, and even that trust is guarded. I value her fiercely. She reminds me tea here is still good in the world, even if it's harder to find. The old legal case, the one Sarah so casually disclosed, became public. It was a humiliating ordeal. My name was dragged through the mud for months. But, ironically, the very recordings that exposed Sarah's betrayal also helped to vindicate me in the public eye regarding that old case. The fact that Sarah had so meticulously kept the confidential details, that she had weaponized them, made the public realize I was a victim, not just of her betrayal, but of a calculated plot. The narrative shifted. I was no longer just the CEO whose wife cheated. I was the CEO whose wife tried to destroy him, exposing his deeply buried past in the process. It's not a badge of honor, but it's better than pure public shame. Healing is a slow, uneven process. Some days I feel almost normal. I can laugh. I can focus on work. I can even enjoy a quiet evening. Other days, the memories crash over me like a tidal wave. A scent, a song, a familiar phrase can trigger a flashback to the sound of her voice on that recording. The cold calculation in her words. And the pain, the profound, gut-wrenching pain, returns. I don't think I'll ever truly get over it. Trust, once broken, feels like it can never be fully repaired. The innocence, once lost, can never be regained. The heart, once shattered, retains its scars. But I am still here. I am still standing. I lost a company, a marriage, a future, and a part of myself. But I didn't lose everything, and I survived. The recordings, the very instrument of my torment, were also my salvation. A devastating truth that saved me from a lie that would have consumed me whole. It was a heartbreaking discovery, but it allowed me to pick up the pieces, however broken, and start to build a new, albeit colder, life.